On the evening of March 30th, 2026, hundreds of aviation enthusiasts lined the perimeter fence at RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk, England. What they were watching was 12 A-10C Thunderbolt II attack aircraft landing in two waves of 6. Michigan Air National Guard tail markings, transatlantic KC-135 tanker support out of Bangor, and RAF Mildenhall, final destination the Middle East. The next day, 6 more from Idaho's 190th Fighter Squadron followed, 18 Warthogs on the ground at Lakenheath in 48 hours, with additional aircraft still at Pease Air National Guard Base in New Hampshire, waiting for the Atlantic crossing. According to Air and Space Forces magazine, the A-10 fleet in the CENTCOM theater was poised to double. The Air Force has spent a decade trying to retire this aircraft. It just deployed more of them to a combat zone than at any point in recent memory. The question this breakdown is built to answer: why now? Why these aircraft specifically, and what does this deployment, alongside USS Georgia, transiting toward the region, and 5,000 Marines already in theater, tell us about the shape of the next phase? 6 weeks into Operation Epic Fury, the headline numbers describe a campaign that has done extraordinary damage to Iran's conventional military capacity. Over 11,000 confirmed strikes. Iran's ballistic missile launch rate reportedly down 90% from day one, its conventional navy largely neutralized. And yet the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Over 150 commercial vessels are still anchored outside the strait entrance. See, insurance underwriters still are not writing policies for Persian Gulf transits. The diplomatic track that Trump described as gaining strength on March 31st had not produced a public agreement as of April 5th. What is visible in open-source data is that the military track is still adding capability. The A-10 Surge, the USS Georgia's reported transit, the 82nd Airborne Commander deploying, each is a distinct piece of a picture that is not yet fully resolved. The A-10's current confirmed roles in this campaign directly explain why 18 more are being sent. General Kane confirmed on March 19th that Warthogs were hunting and killing Iranian fast attack boats and mine-laying assets along the Iranian coast. The exact mission the aircraft was validated for in USS Santa Barbara's Persian Gulf training exercise on February 2nd, per just 26 days before Epic Fury began. The APKWS rocket, a low-cost laser-guided munition that converts an unguided Hydra 70 rocket into a precision weapon, allows the A-10 to engage a small boat in a congested shipping lane without the collateral risk of a larger warhead. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon fires 30mm rounds at 3,900 per minute. Against a fast attack craft or a mine-laying speedboat, there is no more cost-effective weapon in the U.S. inventory. You do not send a Warthog into a fight unless you have already kicked the door down, as British defense researcher Jack Buckby told the English Chronicle. The door was kicked down by B-2S, F-22S, and F-35S in the first week. What the A-10 is doing now, and what 18 more will expand, is the systematic clearance work on the surface threats that the air campaign cleared the environment for. The institutional history behind this deployment carries its own significance. According to Air and Space Forces magazine, the 190th Fighter Squadron at Gowan Field, Idaho, one of the 2 units now deploying through Lakenheath, was in the process of retiring A-10s to the Davis-Monthan Boneyard as recently as May 2025. The Air Force had been trying to accelerate the Warthog's retirement for years, arguing it was too slow and too visible for high-threat environments. Congress blocked the accelerated retirement plan in December 2025, mandating that the fleet not fall below 103 aircraft in fiscal year 2026. 2 months after that congressional intervention, the same aircraft that the Air Force was trying to mothball is being surged to a combat theater at a pace that aviation analysts at Janes describe as either expanding ongoing missions or replacing and augmenting aircraft already in theater. The debate about whether the A-10 has a place in modern warfare has been resolved, at least temporarily, by the Strait of Hormuz. 30 A-10s operating over the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's coastal zone creates a persistent armed overwatch capability that no other aircraft in the current deployment matches. The F-35 is faster, stealthier, and carries more sophisticated sensors, but its operational profile is not built for the kind of hours-long low-altitude loiter that hunting dispersed speedboats in complex coastal terrain requires. The A-10's titanium bathtub protects the pilot against ground fire from the kind of weapons Iran's IRGC fast attack crews carry. Its twin engines and redundant hydraulics mean it can absorb damage that would force other aircraft to break off. Its combat radius of approximately 800 kilometers and loiter capability mean a single A-10 can stay over the same stretch of coast for an extended period, identifying, tracking, and engaging targets of opportunity that a faster aircraft would pass through and leave behind. According to Jane's analyst Sam Wise, cited by the BBC, the aircraft already in theater are either expanding missions or being replaced and augmented. 30 aircraft means both simultaneously. The connection between the A-10 surge and the Marine deployment is not incidental. According to RUSI analyst Nick Reynolds, cited by The National, helicopter-borne Marine forces are capable of conducting raids to deny the shores of the Strait of Hormuz to Iranians, but those raids require persistent armed overwatch from aircraft that can stay in the area, provide close fire support, and distinguish between combatants and civilian fishing activity in a congested maritime environment. That is a precise description of what 30 A-10s operating from Muwafaq Salti in Jordan or similar CENTCOM bases would provide. The Washington Post's reporting on Pentagon preparation for weeks of limited ground operations described the planning as requiring close air support architecture. The A-10 is that architecture. The USS Georgia, hull number SSGN 729, is an Ohio-class guided missile submarine converted from a ballistic missile boat in 2004. Its primary configuration, 154 Tomahawk cruise missile tubes, 2 dry deck shelters on the forward hull that can each deploy a sealed delivery vehicle, and capacity for up to 66 special operations personnel. According to Middle East Forum analysis citing open-source records, USS Georgia participated in Operation Midnight Hammer in June 2025, launching more than 30 Tomahawk missiles at Isfahan as part of the opening nuclear facility strikes. The Navy operates 4 Ohio-class SSGNs: Ohio, Florida, Michigan, and Georgia. In September 2025, the Navy removed USS Ohio and USS Florida from the fiscal year 2026 deactivation list, preserving the full SSGN strike capacity. Competitor reporting indicated USS Georgia passing through the Strait of Gibraltar as of March 31st. Its confirmed current location is not publicly disclosed, which is, by design, the operational standard for submarine movements. The operational logic for how an SSGN like USS Georgia fits into a potential Kharg Island operation involves 3 distinct capabilities. First, 154 Tomahawks pre-programmed against coastal missile batteries, radar stations, and IRGC defensive positions along the approach corridor, fired from the Gulf of Oman before any surface vessel is within range of those defenses. Second, the dry deck shelters deploying sealed delivery vehicles at depth, with special operations teams approaching the island underwater in the hours before a marine landing, cutting communications, neutralizing radar, and mapping the remaining defensive positions. Third, the submarine itself, providing continuous passive sonar coverage of the approach corridor, tracking Iranian mini-submarines and underwater mines that represent the primary threat to surface vessels. The honest caveat that the War on the Rocks analysis applied. The shallow waters of the Strait of Hormuz present real constraints for a vessel the size of an Ohio class. The Gulf of Oman standby position, outside the strait, within Tomahawk range of every target on the Iranian coast, is the more operationally sound positioning. Whether USS Georgia is currently in that position is not publicly confirmed. Subscribe. We build these equations every week. Here's the problem that 30 A-10s, 5,000 Marines, VEEC, and 154 Tomahawks cannot resolve on their own. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery told Axios directly, "If the U.S. seizes Kharg Island, Iran can turn off the spigot on the other end. Taking the export terminal does not mean controlling Iranian oil production. Iran can simply stop producing and exporting, accepting the economic damage as a cost of denying the U.S. the leverage it is trying to create." The CNN intelligence report on Kharg Island fortifications confirmed that Tehran has moved manpads to the island, laid anti-personnel mines along the shorelines, and repositioned air defenses in anticipation of a Marine landing. A senior Gulf official cited by CNN warned privately that occupying Kharg would result in high casualties and trigger Iranian retaliation against Gulf countries' infrastructure, which would impose costs on the Gulf states hosting U.S. forces, not on the force itself. War on the Rocks published its assessment on April 6th. The operational question is not whether U.S. forces can seize a position. They can. The question is, what happens in the days after seizure, when Iran's remaining rocket artillery focuses entirely on a fixed position 25 kilometers from the mainland? The Atlantic Council's Military Asset Tracker, updated April 3rd, adds an important dimension to the buildup picture. Its current B-1 Lancer numbers in epic fury likely break the post-Cold War record for concentrated deployment in one theater, creating future maintenance windows where U.S. force generation capacity will be significantly reduced. If the USS Gerald R. Ford remains deployed past April 15th, it will break the post-Vietnam War carrier deployment record of 294 days. The E-3 Sentry, effectively destroyed at Prince Sultan Air Base, has no direct replacement in production. The A-10 Depot Maintenance Program at Hill Air Force Base is ending as those same aircraft are being surged to a combat theater. The campaign is consuming military capacity at a rate that will constrain options in other theaters, specifically the Indo-Pacific, for months or years after it concludes. Every piece being added to the Middle East is a piece temporarily unavailable elsewhere. That is the strategic cost that the tactical buildup carries. The Trump administration's communication on April 5th framed the next phase in specific terms, 48 hours before consequences if Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz. Hegseth described the upcoming days as decisive on March 31st. CENTCOM's target count suggested approximately 3,000 targets remaining on the strike list. Against that backdrop, 3 tracks are running simultaneously. The diplomatic track, Pakistan relaying messages between Washington and Tehran, Oman serving as a back channel, Iran's foreign ministry publicly calling a ceasefire unrealistic while reportedly engaging privately, has not produced a public agreement, but has not collapsed either. Feed the military track, A-10s doubling in theater, Marines on USS Tripoli in position, USS Boxer and its 2,500 Marines approaching, 82nd Airborne Command deploying, represents a force posture that grows more capable every week. The economic track, Brent crude above $116, over 150 tankers anchored outside the strait, Gulf state energy revenues disrupted, applies pressure in both directions on Iran's ability to fund continued operations and on the United States' ability to sustain political support for an extended campaign. The most likely near-term military action based on confirmed deployments and stated objectives is not a full Kharg Island seizure. It is an intensification of the Hormuz coastline clearing operations that A-10s, Apaches, and Marine helicopter raids have been building toward since the 82nd Airborne Commander was ordered to deploy. According to Pentagon officials cited by the Washington Post, the plans being prepared fall short of a full invasion and could involve raids by special operations and conventional infantry against coastal missile sites and fast attack boat positions. This is precisely the mission profile that 30 A-10s operating from Jordan, a SEAL-capable SSGN positioned offshore, and 2 Marine expeditionary units are specifically configured to execute. The ground option remains available. The more limited option of systematically clearing the coastal threat infrastructure that is keeping the strait closed appears to be the more immediate operational priority. The honest analytical summary of where Operation Epic Fury stands at the start of Week 6 is this. The air campaign has achieved what it set out to achieve against Iran's conventional military capacity: 11,000 targets, air defenses reportedly 80% degraded, conventional Navy neutralized, ballistic missile launch rate down 90%. The problem that the air campaign has not solved, the Strait of Hormuz closure, maintained by coastal missiles, mines, dispersed fast attack boats, and island garrisons that airstrikes degrade but do not eliminate, is now being addressed by a force posture specifically designed for it. 30 A-10s that can loiter over the coast for hours, an SSGN with 154 Tomahawks and dry deck shelters carrying special forces, a 5,000 Marines on 2 amphibious ships in theater, the 82nd Airborne Command deploying, the Pentagon preparing weeks of limited ground operations per the Washington Post. Every element is in place or approaching. What is not in place is a confirmed presidential decision to execute. White House Press Secretary Leavitt said it clearly. Preparation does not equal a presidential decision. Trump said publicly that he was not putting troops anywhere, while adding that if he were, he certainly would not tell you. The force is built. The diplomatic deadline is issued. The economic pressure is mounting. The aircraft that the Air Force has been trying to retire for a decade just landed at a British airbase while hundreds of plane spotters watched and photographed them. None of that constitutes a decision. All of it constitutes optionality. What the next 2 weeks determine is which option gets chosen and whether Iran reaches the same conclusion before a choice is made for it. This video is based on publicly available reports and analysis. Some details may be subject to change.